Yesterday, the greatest coach of all time called it a career. After 17 magnificent seasons as Alabama's head coach, Nick Saban has retired. We're going to talk about the legacy that he leaves behind. Thanks for hanging out with us here on the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell so when news breaks, you'll have our information as we get it, and we'll share it together. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Roll Tide. What do you say, everybody? I'm Mick Gillispie. Welcome to the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel. And again, thank you for being here. Our show is presented by newlifeart.com. Use the promo code Bama Tailgate, 15% off a regularly priced item. Bama Tailgate, when you pimp out your man cave with some great Saban memorabilia, they have it all there at newlifeart.com. All right, let's talk about Nick Saban. And honestly, this is so personal. As a graduate of the University of Alabama and someone that was there for the entire ride, and even before that, it's a sad day yesterday when he decided to call it a career. But at the same time, you understand the minute that Nick Saban showed up to Tuscaloosa in 2007 until yesterday when he told us after he talked to his team that he would be retiring as Alabama's football coach. And in coaching period, we were sad. I mean, obviously, it just has hit. It's one of those things that it feels like a funeral, but at the same time, it's really an amazing run, or at least it was an amazing run for Nick Saban, and you just wish him the very best as he goes on with his life, because for 17 years in Tuscaloosa, he gave his all. No matter how successful the program got, it never slowed Nick Saban down from hard work. I want to talk about that legacy, but I also want to talk about what it means just as someone who loves the university, who's spent, a lifetime as a student, and then as someone that worked for the Crimson Tide Sports Network, has covered Alabama for years and bleeds crimson. I mean, crimson and white, man. And I have just tried to figure out how to bottle the emotions that I feel right now and then share those with you guys. So I'm going to talk about things more from a personal standpoint, but also what Nick Saban has meant to Alabama, because it goes beyond football. But let's talk about Nick Saban and his legacy as a football coach. Nick Saban is one of the greatest coaches of all time when it comes to records, right? 292, 71-1 in his entire career. So that puts him fifth all-time, 112 wins behind the great Joe Paterno of Penn State. He spent time, obviously, at Alabama. Before that, at LSU, Michigan State. He was at Kent State. 292 wins, only 71 losses, and a tie in those games, which is crazy to me, that you look at the fact that his teams went to bowls 25 out of 28 seasons, and he never had a losing campaign as a football coach, as a head football coach. And then, of course, in Tuscaloosa, 9 SEC championships, including this year, and that went over number 1 Georgia, ended the longest winning streak in SEC history, 6 national championships, and was there for those games as well. 2009, which was such a special season for me, because when I was a student, we just weren't very good. And we dreamed about being around a program that could reach the pinnacle of college football. And I remember in 2009, I was the fill-in engineer at Bryant-Denny Stadium when Nick Saban addressed the crowd for the championship celebration. And he got on stage and he said, "This isn't the end. This is just the beginning." And it was almost like that LeBron James moment where he's like, we're going to win 1, 2, and he's pointing all these championships out. and he delivered that. Won again in 2011 and 12, 15, 17, and then the game in 2020 where Alabama dominated Ohio State. But it goes a lot further than that because Alabama was in the mix every single year for a championship after the first season that he was in Tuscaloosa in 2007. And he got that first team to buy in, and they bought in the entire way. 201 wins in Tuscaloosa, only 29 losses. I could probably go back and tell you about all 29 losses because they were so rare in a season. And most of those came that first year, it felt like. Alabama was constantly putting out players that were All-Americans and then eventually NFL stars. He led Alabama to their first ever Heisman Trophy winner. Well, 2 of them. No, 3, 4. It was crazy. Alabama was always known as the school that didn't have Heisman Trophy winners. Then Mark Ingram, he won one. Then Derrick Henry won a Heisman. Then Devontae Smith won a Heisman. Then Bryce Young won a Heisman. Alabama with 4 Heisman Trophy winners as Nick Saban was the head coach. He was beloved by his players. He made millionaires out of a lot of guys from around the country and in the state of Alabama. The program played the game the right way. I think that at Alabama, the legacy that started a long, long time ago, long before any of us were alive, just continued through guys like Bear Bryant and Gene Stallings. And then when Nick Saban came to town, the program was in a lull. It hadn't won a championship since 92, and honestly wasn't really in the championship picture a whole lot until 2008. And then they came up short. They were determined in 2009. They won. And from that point on, Alabama's dynasty was in full effect. They lost championship games. They lost playoff games, but they won a lot of championship games and they won a lot of playoff games. And they did it the right way. Nick Saban was adamant about doing things the way that they were supposed to be done. He talked a lot about the process. And the process was not worrying about the end result, but worrying about doing things the right way, learning how to do it the right way, focusing on being great at your job, being a great teammate. And even as college football has changed, Alabama hasn't. And a great example of that was last year when Alabama was left out of the college football playoff. And a lot of us thought that they belonged in, but they weren't. And they were 5th. And instead of having a mass exodus of players to opt-outs, everyone stayed in, including Bryce Young, the first pick in the draft, Will Anderson Jr., who turned out to be the 3rd pick in the NFL draft. The guys wanted to perform for Nick Saban. They wanted to live up to the standard that had been set at Alabama. They wanted to make Nick Saban proud because they respected him so much. Jalen Waddle in the 2020 national championship game was coming off of an injury. And a lot of people in the NFL, players were saying, hey, you shouldn't be in this game. You shouldn't play. You should sit out. But he refused to listen to that. And his answer was that it's Alabama and this is what we do. And he got in and made a catch in that game. And, you know, although he wasn't 100%, it's part of the standard that Alabama has set. I don't know that there'll ever be another coach as great as Nick Saban on the football field. But what I'll remember most about Coach Saban isn't just the winning on the field, but I got to go back to 2011. I had a house in Tuscaloosa, and we had on, I think it was April 27th, we had these horrific tornadoes that ripped through our entire region, and over 140 people died that day. And all of a sudden, the world of sports seemed very, very small. And I worked in baseball in the football off season, and then I worked for the Crimson Tide Sports Network, during the winter time. And I took off of work, and I just wanted to volunteer. And I know a lot of you guys did the same thing. You volunteered to help our community, and I needed to find somewhere to go and help. And that was Alabama. That was the athletic department. That was under Nick Saban. And in golf carts with players that were part of that football team, we rode out into the community and just helped. We brought water to people. We helped people get their items out of their houses. Whatever anyone needed to do, we did that. And I noticed a difference in Coach Saban, who was always focused on football. And I didn't know him personally, but being around, he was so laser focused on winning football games. That experience, I think, changed him. It changed my perception of him for sure, because I saw a guy who was adamant about helping, about having people help any way they could. That included the football team. That included people like me that were involved in the athletic department. And the spirits that we saw uplifted in the community through that really changed my life. And I'm sure that that a lot of the people that were involved with me would say the same thing. I remember being in a car with AL.com's Michael Casagrande riding around with Finest Gaston, who was one of the athletic directors at the time, and just going spot to spot and seeing what we could do to help out and being a part of that. And we weren't writers and ADs or assistant ADs or broadcasters. We were just people that were doing everything we could to help our community. And then the Sabans went out and they helped build homes for people and did so many things to help our community in Tuscaloosa. And then that football team went on to win the national championship. And that was just such a special year. I can still see the ribbons, the houndstooth ribbons of support. Saban made a habit of doing stuff like that. He was constantly involved in charity outside of the community. His wife, Miss Terry, who was a great ambassador for the university because she cared so much. And that's what I'm going to miss the most about Coach Saban. Selfishly, guys, I'm going to tell you, I wish that he would coach forever. I mean, like you, it's felt like a funeral. It's hard to say goodbye. I talked to Chris Lowe on the Bama Tailgate show a few weeks ago, and I asked him, I said, Chris, you know Coach Saban, what does he say about retiring? And what Chris said was, one of the things that he said, Coach Saban doesn't want to retire at a point in his life where he can't go out and do the things that he wants to do after football, travel, be able to spend time with his grandkids, be able to work at his car dealerships, do the things that he isn't able to do because the guy didn't know how to not give 110%. He was like a clock when it comes to work. He got there early, probably before everybody else, and he left the same day after everybody else. Jake Coker and I do a podcast called Elephant in the Room. I know a lot of you guys watch that. And Coker talked about the times when he would leave the football complex really late and he'd look up and see the light on in Nick Saban's office. That's obviously his story to tell, but that is a great illustration of what dedication Coach Saban had as the football coach at the University of Alabama to the process and to success. So as we move on, and there's going to be news constantly now as Alabama finds a new head coach and a new defensive coordinator and figures out how they're going to keep players from transferring and who's staying and who's going and what recruits are decommitting and all of that stuff. But today I just wanted to talk about how lucky I am as a guy that is so proud of the University of Alabama to have been around for 17 years of excellence. I don't know if it'll ever get any better, but I can tell you, just as someone that was there from the start, before the start, and I guess I'm going to be here after, I thank God that I got the opportunity to witness and be a part of this historic run in Tuscaloosa. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us here on the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel. And again, I hope that you like and subscribe and that you be a part of what we do here on the channel as we cover Alabama. Thank you so much. And again, I'm Mick Gillispie. Roll Tide, everybody. We will talk to you again really soon. And if anything breaks, count on us because we'll be right here to cover that for you guys. Roll Tide.